Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we have another round, finally, of PWCC sales as part of our Grail Quest Bankroll challenge that I want to share with you today. And we'll go through the sales, talk about them, and we will then look at a review of our Grail Quest ledger to see where our bankroll stands relative to the price of our Grail, which is a PSA 8 Lionel Messi 2004 Mega Crack 71 biz. So without further ado, let's get into the sales. We had 4 sales that ended at this past weekend's PWCC auction. I want to set the stage a little bit because for those of you that might follow me on Instagram or that I've DM'd with, or if you're just buying or selling on PWCC, you know that there's been some issues with PWCC the past few weeks. So obviously, as we all know, the World Cup hype has been building for months. The World Cup is now here, and not only are there a bunch of soccer cards now on PWCC, but Golden Auction just had a World Cup auction that ended this past week. So I would say like World Cup or like soccer card supply is pretty high compared to where it has been recently. A couple weeks ago on PWCC, there was a server outage as the auction entered extended bidding. So after the first round of extended bidding, there was basically an outage and people couldn't place bids. So what PWCC did is they basically just canceled all the bids and decided that they would just relist these items a couple weeks later, which ended up being this past weekend, because they just they wanted buyers to have a chance to buy the cards that they were bidding on, which in theory I think is fair for sure for the buyer. I think, as you'll see, and maybe as I'll dive into, I don't know that was necessarily the most fair thing for sellers, both because of just the timing of when these items were relisted, but also the fact that there was no option for us to cancel or not sell these items. So like these items were supposed to sell 2 or 3 weeks ago, they were about to sell, then there was a server outage, and then they were canceled. It would have been nice to at least say like, okay, I want to just pull this off and like set it in a future auction versus having to have it go this past weekend. But again, you know, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Like I mentioned, there was a Golden World Cup auction that finished on Saturday, December 3rd. Tons of cards there, you know, huge flood of supply to the market. And then with this PWCC auction ending Sunday, December 4th, it was kind of, you know, for lack of a better way to put it, a bloodbath. So I have a lot more thoughts on buying and selling in general that I plan to dive deeper on in a future episode of just learnings throughout this Grail Quest. But just wanted to kind of set the stage because I think this provides a lot of context for some of the prices that we are about to dive into here in a second. So the first card we had that sold in this auction was the 2001 Futura World Stars 3D, the Figo SGC9. You might recall this is one of the first cards I bought as part of Grail Quest. I got it because I thought it just looked cool. It was pretty unique. As you can see, it's pop 1, none higher. This is probably a good example of where like scarcity doesn't necessarily mean rarity. You know, maybe this is just not necessarily like the best card to grade. But anyways, we finally had this sell on PWCC. We were all in for a total of $44.82. This is back when we obviously sent to SGC at $30 a card. And the sales...
No! God, please, no! No! No!
...were $8. I think it only got a couple of bids. Again, just not really a, widely desired card, I would say. So we took a pretty big loss there, $36.82, minus 82%. Not ideal, but, you're just going to have losses like this when you're buying and selling cards, and I think it's the first initial reaction is like, man, this is disappointing, but I really think that the next reaction should be like, okay, well, how can I make sure I don't repeat this mistake next time? And I think for me and for this challenge, these are just not the types of cards, and probably SGC is not the type of grading company that we should be sending cards to. There's obviously a lot going on here, but you live, you learn, and just try not to repeat the mistake next time. So this next one is the 2003 Mundi Cromo Fichas de la Liga, the Ronaldinho. We got a PSA 8 to say Pop 24 with 28 higher. You can see down here on the bottom, I put an SGC 8 did $74 before the buyer's premium only a couple of months ago. We had an SGC 9.5 that we sold for like $330 a couple of months ago. So I was very excited with the PSA 8. I thought, just based on recent comps, this is likely going to do somewhere in like the $150 range, maybe $100 on the low end. You can see based on our cost basis, I was pretty confident, pretty happy that this was going to be, this is exactly one of those like high floor, high ceiling cards I talk about, where the cost plus grading in a PSA 8, you're looking at like minimal downside, whereas like there's potential upside to like double, triple your money. And so I was excited about that. This one actually had a lot of bid activity before we entered extended bidding, and then it just stopped. So it only sold for $43.
He's heating
1725 loss, 29%. So this was a pretty big disappointment. I think this is a perfect example of a card that, had it sold a couple of weeks ago, would have sold for 2-3x this price. I think a lot of people are just kind of, there's just a flood of supply with the golden auction, and people, it's not as desired, right? It's kind of one of many cards that were available on PWCC, and so I think just the timing of this one really kind of hurt this one specifically. Next one is a 2006-2007 Mundi Cromo Fichas de la Liga Ronaldo PSA 7. This is the circle card. So this one I bought. You can see it's Pop 2, 3 higher, so pretty, not a lot of these graded. I bought this one because of that. It was Ronaldo. It was an interesting looking card. I got it for pretty cheap. You can see we're all in for $28, and most of that is grading fees. I think like $18 of that is grading fees. So I was pretty confident that like, okay, even at $28, PSA 7, we're probably breaking even, or potentially eking out a small profit. But again, the high floor, high ceiling combos, again, just another kind of disappointing one. And again, I can just only chalk this up to like, there's just too many cards relative to the amount of buyers that there were on the platform. And this is another one that, like, I think before, when the server outage happened, this one was selling for higher than $14 a couple of weeks ago. And, unfortunately, it got relisted, and
he's on fire.
We got less than what we had hoped. So 50% loss there. 0 for 3 so far. The final card that we sold on this auction was the 2021 Mosaic Premier League Phil Foden Genesis Prism. Foden is playing for England in the World Cup right now. He is one of the bright young stars of not only England, but Manchester City. Love the Genesis Prisms. PSA 10, was super excited to get this one. We were all in for $83. So again, felt like, given it's a PSA 10, $83, we're probably, I think our upside, there's definitely upside, and I think our downside is capped, just given the card, the player, and the grade. And we actually made money on this one. So that was actually a pretty good outcome. We almost doubled our money.
Pay that man his money.
$78 profit, 94%. I would take this regardless of the outage and just the sort of, flooding supply of the most recent PWCC auction. I would take this in a vacuum, but especially given all the other prices that we just saw, and just the general, kind of underperformance of this most recent auction, I'm super ecstatic to get this one. This one pretty much like saves our weekend in terms of just profit, profit wise. Yeah, you can see Pop 4. This is like the kind of card that I think does well in a challenge like this. It's a, modern card, good grade, good looking card, good player, kind of checks all the boxes. So pretty awesome there. So I guess just some overall takeaways, and let me just move my face out of there. Okay, so just some overall takeaways here. So obviously pretty disappointed with the, with the sales, and a lot of that isn't so much on the raw dollars, but the way I look at these sales is you look at the cost plus what it costs to grade, plus what you can expect to sell it for in, various grades. So like generally what I like to do for modern cards, for the Foden, for example, is, okay, I expect this to get a 9 or a 10. So if it gets a 9 and I graded it for $15, $18, whatever, and I'm in it for, I paid $60 for it, like, what does that mean in terms of like my, downside, upside, right? So like what I like to do is make sure that the cost plus grading fee is less than the expected PSA 9. Because then I'm basically saying is like, okay, even if it gets a 9, which is not not what I'm hoping for, I'm pretty much breaking even. So I'm protecting myself on the downside. But if it gets a 10, we're looking at a 40, 50, 80% profit. And then that's the type of cards that we want to focus on. So, similarly with the Ronaldinho, especially because we had graded that in SGC 9.5 and did so well on it, even in a PSA 8, I was like, this is great. We're probably going to double our money based on just comps and what we were in the card for. And so just to kind of lose on a lot of those cards, it's not so much losing, it's just losing relative to what we expected, when we made those purchases and we graded those cards. It's just kind of a bummer. And there's not much we can do. Like, stuff like this is going to happen. We can't control the market. We can't control all the different factors of the market. And unfortunately, the PWCC outage, pushing these sales from 2 weeks ago to right after the golden auction, I don't think there's any doubt that impacted our realized values. Like I said, many of these cards were already selling for higher than what they sold for. And I have other cards too that I sold that were literally sold for higher at the time of the outage. So even without additional buyers being able to bid on them, than what these cards sold for now 2 weeks later, which is just kind of a bummer. But, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
We did, on the positive side, because I am all about being positive on this channel, is we did still make almost $10 in profit across these 4 cards. So, you can look at it like we should have made more, but at the same time, like, if every weekend we sell 4 cards for $10, I mean, it's not a huge, it's going to take a while, but like, we're going to build up our bankroll if that's what we're doing. So I think it's hard to be mad about being in the green. It is a little disappointed because most likely we probably should have been higher in the green, but we'll take it and we'll take the learnings and we'll move on. And I think this highlights, we had 3 cards that underwhelmed pretty decently, and then 1 card basically made up for it. And so this is obviously highlights the importance of finding winners and minimizing losses. And then finally, this is a learning experience. Like, if the raw to grade calculus on some of these cards is changing, then we need to change our strategies when we're buying cards. And what I mean by that is, like, if the cost to buy a card plus what it costs to grade it is much higher than like a PSA 8, PSA 9, or like whatever our expected grade is, then maybe we need to stop purchasing those, certain types of cards. Obviously, a good example of that too is like the Figo. Like, that's just not a card that we should really be buying in terms of a challenge like this. Like, we should be buying cards like the Foden that, in a PSA 10, we know there's going to be a market for that card, right? Versus like, hey, we bought this super niche card of a pre-modern great. Hopefully somebody sees the value in it that we've created through grading. So, and finally, like, this stuff is all fun. And that's what I try to keep reminding myself, is that this is fun. It's fun to buy cards. It's fun to grade cards. It's fun to flip them and see just like how we can kind of build a bankroll. And it's important to really keep that at the forefront of like, this is fun. This hobby's fun. And that's the point above all else. Obviously, you don't want to lose, all your money, but, at the end of the day, it's really all just about having fun. So with that, we will now head over and take a review of our bankroll to see where we stand after all of these sales and how far we are in terms of percentage attainment of the amount needed in order to buy the Messi PSA 8. All right, so I'll do a quick ledger snapshot here. As you can see, with our $1,000 initial investment, we are now sitting at a current bankroll of $285.18. You can see on items that we've sold, we've currently gained a profit of $222. And the current price of the Messi PSA 8 71 biz, based on the most recent sale, is about $4,680. That is based on a recent PWCC auction as of December 4th. So given our current bankroll, we are now at about 6% of the way there. Still, kind of slow going, but starting to make some progress. And as you can see on the tracker, here's our tracker of all the cards that we hold. I will scroll down quick to the bottom because, as you can see, there are about 12 cards that are currently at PSA. I am expecting those cards to be returned imminently. I received a PSA notification that the grades are in, and they're being shipped back to me as we speak. So should have some more information there. If we go over here to the right, you can see columns M through O. These basically show which cards have sold and for what price on which date and which platform. So you can see out of most of the cards that we've graded so far, there's only about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or so that remain unsold. I would say about 5 of those are actually currently in a PWCC auction, so we should have more information there in the near future. And then a couple of them, the couple of Virgil van Dijks, I have currently listed on eBay. So if you are interested in buying a Virgil van Dijk Genesis Prism PSA 10 or a Virgil van Dijk Pink Fluorescent jersey numbered 4 out of 10 PSA 10, let me know. But as you can see, last thing I want to highlight is total net sales of a little over $1,000. Like I mentioned, profit on those sales of about $222. And the profit percentage, this is a column that I think one of my learnings from this project and something I'll keep harping on is that the most important thing in a project like this is really just getting, maximizing your wins. So you can see the Trent Alexander-Arnold, 118% profit. Ronaldinho, 115%. Ronaldinho, 332%. We made 94% on the Foden that we just showed. And then if you look at the losses, like there are more losses, but the percentage loss is lower than any of the wins. So all of the wins are basically double or more our money. And then all of the losses, for the most part, are 50% or less, with many close to that, obviously a couple of bad ones. But I think my point here is that it's all about really those high floor, high ceiling opportunities. And what I mean by that is that you're not going to win on every card, but the goal is to basically position yourself to, when you lose small, but you put yourself in a position to, when you hit a PSA 10 on a big card, it can give you that 2, 3, 4x return. And that's what we're really trying to do here. So that's just a quick ledger snapshot. As I mentioned, I'll go back to the front. We are sitting at a current bankroll of $285, so we can do some buying now. We have a number of cards for sale and a number of cards coming back from PSA. So hopefully this current bankroll will be much higher in the near future. But thanks again for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.